Welcome to the Pro Aging Podcast. I'm Steve Gurney, founder of the Positive Aging Community. We're excited that you can join us for our interactive discussions with the pioneers and thought leaders on a wide variety of topics related to aging and longevity. We're able to bring these discussions to you along with copies of the Positive Aging Sourcebook thanks to the support of our Positive Aging Community champions. Visit proaging.com to connect with them and find hundreds of resources. Today we had a chat with Amy Griboff, who's an elder law attorney and a Positive Aging Community champion. Amy is going to lead us through a discussion that explores the conversations and legal options to ensure your pet is cared for and has a good life in case of your incapacity or death. So let's jump into a great discussion with Amy. And then I need to let our LinkedIn and YouTube friends jump on. And as I said a little bit earlier, the topic of estate planning for our pets was a true blind spot for me until I heard a story of a woman who was a solo ager, and she had done just about everything except for prepare for how her pet was going to be cared in the event of her passing away. And I've been really looking forward to finding somebody to come on and talk about this. And as I'd mentioned, Amy Griboff is a Positive Aging Community champion who's an elder law attorney. And I was on her website and I saw a post about estate planning for pets. And I picked up the phone, and I'm delighted, Amy, that you were willing to jump on and start a discussion and have a conversation on this very important topic. And Amy, I've had a peek at your slide deck, and usually at the beginning of these, we do a little, hey, Amy, tell us about yourself. But I saw you're going to do that. So instead of doing that, I'm going to give folks a preview of what I hope we can have happen after the talk. Hey, Violet, come here, girl. So come on. Good girl. Okay, come on up here. Okay, so this is my golden doodle, Violet. Violet, say hi to everybody. She's got a new haircut, and she's such a lovable dog. And we love these members of our family so much. I think that at least thinking about what's going to happen if we pass away, we're incapacitated, something happens, putting this in our plan is just super important. So Amy, I'm going to duck behind the curtain and I'll let you take it away, and then feel free to take a few breaks. And if there's any questions or comments of relevance, I will make sure to jump in.
Super. That is wonderful. I love Violet, and I love the work I do, because I'm so fortunate because I work with folks who care about planning for themselves, or planning for their children if they have them, and their pets if they have them. And I look at this planning as planning for life. We could focus on death. Yes, we don't get out of this world alive, but my focus is let's plan for life and be sure that the important pets, whoever's important in our life, is planned for. And I'm going to attempt to share my screen. And so just give me a moment as I switch over. And so we're talking about today estate planning for our dogs, our cats, any other animal that you might have, and how we're going to protect them. And as Steve mentioned, I'm just going to take a moment, because I always hate when people spend a lot of time on this stuff. Okay, I've got a degree, I've got a law degree, I have an advanced degree in elder law, I've been doing this type of work for over 20 years. And yes, I'm a member of all the important organizations out there and licensed in Maryland and in DC. So let's get to the important stuff, which is planning for our pets. And so just kind of start off with this agenda of, why are we here? Why are we planning for our pets? How can we plan for our pets? What are our options? So we're going to dig into that. We're going to kind of go over the things we don't want to forget, takeaways. And as Steve mentioned, questions and answers, we can hold them to the end. If Steve might pop in and jump in and ask some questions as I am speaking, because I'm kind of focused on the talk. Sometimes I kind of miss out on the questions. So hopefully he'll jump in when I miss something there. So let me go to the next slide, maybe. I have now forgotten how to get to the next slide, although I do this all the time. Oh, there we go. All right, we figured out. We'll see if we can do it again. Okay. So, when I'm working with clients, my questionnaire might be a few pages long, but it not only talks about you, your family, what your assets are, but we want to be sure that you are planning for your pet if you have one. And it just surprises me. Steve asked me, do you have any statistics about how many people plan for their pet? And this just really surprised me that, I have two links here. 7 to 9% of people plan for their pets. That's just shocking to me. But my clients do. I encourage them to think about it and include it in their estate planning documents, which we'll talk about. Okay. So why do we need to plan for them? Okay. So I think two important reasons. One, life happens. There's emergencies that we can't plan for, but do they happen all the time? Literally in the last month, as I was planning for this presentation, I received a call from a family member, and she said that, let's say a brother went into the hospital and he had been hospitalized for 2 weeks. And his animal was in the house for 2 weeks alone. And that was really heartbreaking that, for whatever reasons, this person was hospitalized and the animal was alone in the house. So we'll talk about how we can plan for that. Okay. Sometimes life happens and we decide, it's not it might be an emergency, might not be an emergency. We might be living in a home and we're going to move maybe to assisted living or somewhere. And sometimes we can take our pets, but not always. So, what happens then? Or we're living in an apartment in our home somewhere, and we get to the point where we can no longer not plan, but we are no longer able to care and take care of our pet. And that does happen as well in my practice, where, maybe due to an illness, due to an injury, somebody just can no longer take care of their pet. And then obviously, at our passing, we will not be able to take care of them, but we're going to have a plan in place. We're going to learn how to put a plan in place today. So I think the second reason why it's so important to plan is we're living longer. Our pets are living longer. Again, thanks to Steve, I was looking at some statistics and, 30, 40 years ago, our pets' lives were much shorter, maybe 7 to 10 years. Now, due to vet care, food that we're feeding our pets, more we know about our pets, they're living longer too. And, the average age is maybe around 15 years for our pets, but we know that can be longer depending on the type of pet we have, the type of care we give to the pet. So there could be a variety of different reasons that our pets could be living 20 plus years, and oftentimes outliving us. So I see a couple questions coming up. Let me see. Who was the hotel person? That was the person in New York. That name is not coming to me. We think about the dog, definitely a very famous story. And I'm trying to come up with the name. It's not coming to me.
Yeah,
Helmsley,
Helmsley.
right?
Yep.
Yes.
Leona Helmsley. Yep.
So yes, she is a famous person. And but there's actually just recently, because of the Queen's death, Queen Elizabeth, right? There's been stories in the paper. I think actually, Steve, I might have sent you a story about that, which we can share too, about she has two little dogs, and people have been very concerned about, now that she's passed, about who's going to take care of them, how are the pets going to be cared for. So it's definitely something that I'm glad that it's getting some press, and hopefully, Helmsley, I think, was perhaps not such great press.
Yeah, well,
But
yeah, I'm dropping a article in about Leona Helmsley. Her Maltese got $12 million.
yeah. So we'll when we talk about trusts, because that money was left in trust, I will touch upon that subject. So it's good that somebody actually brought that up, because it'll lead right into an issue with trust. But before we get to trust, we have a few steps to go before we get there. So how can we plan for our pets? What can we do? And a lot of people jump to the death issue, Helmsley, the Queen. But trust me, example, just in the last month, getting this call about somebody who was hospitalized and their pet being home alone. This happens a lot, or more often than we think about it, and it doesn't get the press that it should be getting. But and there are things that we can be doing to have things in place in case of an emergency, that we want to talk about. So the first thing is this idea of a financial power of attorney. And a lot of people think about a financial power of attorney, and they think about, okay, if something happens to me and I can't handle my finances, I can't pay my bills, then my agent under my financial power of attorney is going to step in and they're going to pay my bills. Well, that is correct. But what I want to add to that idea is the financial power of attorney is not just about your money, but it's also can be about your pet. And I'm working with a family who recently adopted a pet, and we are massaging the line. So what on the screen, it also says if you download a power of attorney from the internet, it's not going to have a pet provision. So that's kind of just a little ouch, because I know some people do that. And a power of attorney from the internet is going to be useful. But in this situation with pet planning, it's not going to talk about your pet. And so, again, going back to working with my clients, we want to be sure that the financial power of attorney has a provision about your pet, but it also is individualized to your pet and the kind of care it needs and issues that you are concerned about. So on the next slide, here are just a couple of things that my financial power of attorney, somebody has a pet, we're going to say that the agent can take the pet to the veterinarian for care, that they can approve medical care. They can, if needed, not best plan, but it might be a temporary situation where we need to board your pet until we can figure out what's going on, that the agent can hire somebody. Maybe the agent is in California and we're here in Maryland and DC. Well, the person from California, they can jump on a flight, but, maybe they need to hire somebody to walk and take care of and to feed the pet till they can get here, or somebody can be put in the position where they can actually, have your pet for if we know you're going to be hospitalized for a month, we might need somebody immediately to be hired to walk them and feed them. And then we can get them to a more stable environment while you're in the hospital for a month or. So these are powers. And, maybe this just sounds like, oh, this is crazy stuff this attorney is talking about. But I've had to use a power of attorney for clients in the past. Husband and wife were on vacation and both hospitalized at the same time due to a car accident, unconscious, and family was able to get to the pet. And I don't recall why, but I do remember, because I knew the veterinarian, I get a call and the vet would not see the dog, it happened to be a dog, without this power of attorney. And so this is real. This happens. And it's one of the reasons why, we're alive. But if something happens to us, we want our agent to be able to step into our shoes and be able to look to a legal document that says that they can get care from a veterinarian for your animal. They can get medicine. They can, do whatever needs to get done for your specific pet situation. So that's one document that is really important to have in place. And again, specific to your animal situation. So, okay, whoops, didn't work. Let's see if, okay. So that's one legal document we want to be sure that is in place. Another one, now you've passed and now you may have a will. And if you have a will, we want to be sure that your will talks about what's going to happen to your pet if your pet survives you. And so here we have on the slide that we might want to name somebody who's going to care for your pet. We might want to name somebody who's going to find a home for your pet. Sometimes the person we name, it might be, James is going to take our pet. And I'm just kind of making this up. James is going to take our pet and we're going to leave money to James. And so James will receive $5,000 for the care of the pet. And we might, have a few sentences in our will about, how the money should be spent or how James should spend the money on the animal. Sometimes we give, number two, we give that money outright to the person we name. Sometimes we might set up a trust for the money. It depends on, what needs to be done for the care of the pet, how much money, maybe we're not leaving $5,000 in a trust. That probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But if it's a large sum of money, we might be leaving it in a will. In the will, it might say that a trust would be set up for the pet and for their care, and X amount of money would go in the trust for the care of the pet. Sometimes we also leave, number three, we leave money to get the pet rehomed because maybe we don't have somebody who we can trust or believe would be able to take care of our pet. But sometimes getting that animal rehomed, we might have to get them shots. Maybe we're going to need them to be staying somewhere for some length of time. And there's usually in a will, it's not unusual that we're going to have at least one provision talking about the pet and how, or, what our wishes are for the pet. Again, naming somebody to take care of the pet and either take them and keep them in their home or perhaps rehome them. And so that's what we might do with our will document. And next, I'm going to come over. So, well, let me just pop over here for a second. So if you're familiar with a will at your passing, and actually this sometimes surprises people. I've been doing this for 20 years, so I don't usually get surprised. But sometimes people think, well, I have a will, and it says that all my money is going to go to my son. And maybe in the will it says, and my dog is going to go to my son, or my pet, or, is going to go to my son. But what's important to understand is with a will, we have probate, and that money isn't going to get to your son or whoever we name for some time. It usually is going to take at least 3 weeks, 4 weeks, before we can get your death certificate, get into court, get somebody appointed personal representative. And so there's going to be some delay. There is always some delay. Even if you have a will, things just don't happen automatically without court involvement. So, and that's why my next slide is going to talk a little bit about trust. And let me just see. So are you saying we own? So the question was about the power of attorney. And yes, I'm saying, I believe as an estate planning attorney, that if you have a power of attorney, and everybody should have a power of attorney, because why, if you don't, then we're just leaving everything for the court to make decisions about, which I'm not a big fan of that. So yeah, you should have a power of attorney. And yes, if you have an animal that would need to be cared for in case something happens to you, if you're hospitalized, in case of an emergency, absolutely, your power of attorney should have provisions in there. Can you amend a power of attorney? Generally, powers of attorneys are a new power of attorney is done if you want to add a provision into it, and that's a whole nother conversation about why you might why we don't amend powers of attorney. Anyway, okay. So back to our will. So with a will, if we have a will, we want to make provisions for the animal and just understand that there's some delay between your passing and actually something happening with your pet and money getting to the person. So that's why over here on the next page, we're going to talk about revocable trusts. And a revocable trust is a document that operates, it's like a will, but what's nice about is there's no court involvement, and a revocable trust operates in case of, again, you're hospitalized, you're unconscious, you can't take care of your pet. We look to the trust and look to the trust provisions about how your animal would be cared for. And similarly, at your death, we look to the revocable trust and see what provisions are in there about the care of your pet. And because there's no court involvement, With the trust, there's no delay. So there isn't going to be the court saying, oh, we have to appoint somebody under the will and we have to get money to them. With a revocable trust, it's a much smoother process. And so if you become incapacitated or you die, or when you die, right? Then it's going to say, my pet goes to my son, and this is the money that goes to my son. And it's much smoother. There's much less of a delay for the care of your pet in case of your death. And again, just like with the will, with the trust, we're going to have at least one provision that's going to address the pet, how the money would be spent, who is the money going to go to, and it's going to discuss the care of the pet, what should happen if you, in case of disability, how your pet should be cared for, how the person should spend the money. And so this is, again, just a nice, smoother way to be sure that your pet is cared for. In addition to a trust, sometimes, now I will say that I sometimes do something called a standalone pet trust. And this is totally different than a will, and it's different than a revocable trust. And so with a standalone pet trust, this is a document that would be in addition to your will. It's a standalone pet trust, and it's only going to be used or created for really specific reasons. Again, because it's a trust, it's going to operate in case of death or disability. So in that way, it's similar to the revocable trust, but it's a standalone pet trust. And it's, again, only going to be created for a pet that might be living for a long time, like a horse. If you own a horse, I'm not going to recommend you identify a caregiver and money of a horse in a will or in a revocable trust. We're going to have a standalone pet trust. And I don't know, it's been many years since I looked at what Leona Helmsley set up for her dogs. I don't remember if it was a pet trust or not, but this pet trust is going to be created for an animal that is going to be living for a very long time. The cost of the care of the horse, we're not talking about $5,000, $10,000. We're talking large sums of money every single year. And now here on the screen, it says care for cost, for again, a horse, farm animals. Those kinds of animals are going to tend to have this type of pet trust. But again, I will go back to a personal experience where a client did come to me, and he had a revocable trust. And but he wanted, in addition to his revocable trust to handle his finances, he wanted a standalone pet trust for a dog. So these standalone pet trusts can be created for a dog. It can be created for horses and farm animals. But I also want to educate you and let you know that some people want pet trusts for the household animals. And let me just tell you a little bit more, because this was a kind of an unusual situation. This pet, this dog that this person wanted a trust for, he cooked food for his pet. The pet did not get along with any other dogs, was really violent with other dogs. So we knew it would never be able to be rehomed anywhere. He had no family members who would take the animal. And he was hiring, and we created provisions in this standalone trust that a caregiver would be hired for the dog, that this caregiver could live in his home when he passed away. The caregiver would have a salary to care for the dog, to bring the dog to the vet, to cook meals for the dog. I mean, it was an unusual situation, but when you have clients and you have different individual situations, they come to me as an estate planning and elder law attorney to create an individual plan that works for their situation. And so in this situation, a standalone pet trust worked because there was a large sum of money going into this trust. I'm going to flip up to the next slide to talk a little bit more about what would be in a pet trust. Okay. We're going to identify this pet. This pet also happened to have a microchip. So we had a picture of the pet. We had the microchip number of this pet. We can also not only make a pet trust for the current pet, but we could also say that in case, so we don't have to rewrite, make changes to the pet trust. We want to identify that, okay, well, if this particular dog was not alive, if we had purchased a new pet, that this pet would be covered under this pet trust. A trust is going to have somebody who would manage the money. So it wouldn't be the caregiver who was getting all this money. It was going to be a trustee named to manage the money in the trust. We were going to give the trustee powers to pay the caregiver. We could name the caregiver if we knew who they were, or allow the trustee to actually, a little problem. I don't know if I'm having problems with my internet. If we knew who the caregiver was, great. If not, we would allow the trustee to hire a caregiver, hire a new caregiver if the first one didn't work out. We left money for the caregiver, for the pet's care. And, a common question often is, well, how much do I leave $5,000 in my will for the pet, or in the trust? Do I leave $10,000? How much do I leave? And so here I've just kind of put a few different factors in to think about. Is we're looking at the pet's age, what kind of health issues they have or don't have. Do they, if they got cancer, would we want them to be treated for cancer? What's their estimated lifespan? And oftentimes I also recommend, I ask clients, go back, pull all the veterinarian bills you've had for a year. Okay, so that kind of gives us a basis. Well, if you spent $1,000, $10,000, whatever you did, well, let's use that as a basis. And we know, okay, that was for a year. Well, we need to extrapolate that based on the animal's lifespan. And that kind of gives us an idea of how much money should be left, again, either under a will or under a revocable trust, or if we've set up a pet trust just for the pet, or how much money we want to leave for specifically in the pet trust. The other thing we want to always think about is, well, what happens if the pet predeceases us, or maybe the pet only lives for a year? Who's the beneficiary of any money left in the trust? If we've set up a trust, who is the beneficiary for the pet? Because that's an important piece we want to think about. These are also important things to think about before you sit down with an attorney start thinking about it, these issues, it's okay. As an attorney, I think it's my job to bring these issues to my clients and talk through them with the client. But also, if you're coming to this presentation, and hopefully you're going to be able to leave with some information, things to think about. So when you go and meet with your attorney, you'll have some thoughts written down.
This is a good question just came in, Amy. It says, this is so interesting. So are you saying this pet trust paid for a caregiver for the pet to live in their home for the remainder of the pet's life?
That's correct. Absolutely. It
Wow.
did.
Now,
It did.
I was reading up on Leona Helmsley. Her brother refused to take care of her beloved pet. Ironically, the name of the pet is Trouble. And so the funds went towards the pet being cared for in this luxurious way in a kennel. But also another interesting footnote, because this was now the richest pet in the world, there was kidnapping threats against the pet. And so a lot of the funds ended up going towards security for the pet.
Absolutely. And yeah, so I think on my next slide, before we get down to the last point on this slide, because it's going to kind of dovetail into how much money you leave in this trust. In addition, so we had instructions about, again, this client cooked every meal for the dog. There were instructions about what kind of food the dog, it actually, I mean, not all of this was in the trust, but again, when you're thinking about information you want to gather, the food the dog eats, grooming, their medical care, their toys, when the dog passes or the cat passes, do you want them cremated? Burial instructions, memorial instructions. I mean, pets are beloved, and there's pet cemeteries out there. So all kinds of things to think about. And so this last slide is that potentially, so again, if in Maryland and DC, in the Maryland code, in the DC code, it does allow a court to determine that you have left too much money in a trust for your pet, and that the court could require it to be paid to a beneficiary, successor, a beneficiary. So, so if your pet trust says that you leave $12 million to this trust, and your beneficiary is your brother, let's say, a court could determine you have left too much money. Now, I did not search the case law on how much money is too much money. I've never been brought into a case where somebody is fighting at court, saying that there's too much money in a pet trust. But I think that if one could document, this is how much it's going to cost to hire a caregiver. This is how much in the past it's cost me to care for my pet. Well, I don't think a court is going to be able to argue with a reasonable number. I don't know about Helmsley's dogs, but, so I'm not going to try to argue if $12 million is too much or too little, or,
actually, that's one thing the judge did rule, that it was too much money. And then when when the dog passed away and there's still money, it rolled into her estate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah. And, this is education about things, even if you're not leaving a pet trust, specifically. I think that there are, I think somebody has here, I had a canine fur child vet care last year of her life, $10,000. That is not unusual. It's not unusual, folks. So, you might not need a pet trust, but if you want certain care for your animals, you need something, a trust, a will, and because I don't think anybody wants to give an animal, and sometimes people leave them to their friends or family members. You don't want to leave them a burden. They're being kind and going to take care of your pet, your animal child, canine fur child. And so we want to be sure that we leave them money so it's not a burden. And the $10,000 is not unusual. So thank you for sharing that. So, all right, I'm going to skip over the pet trust and move over to let's not forget. Okay. So, a backup plan. So this brings me to my COVID story. We had done a will for someone, and no one knew COVID was gonna happen, obviously, but it did. And let's use that as a learning experience. I had a client who died the month, like March, when COVID just went crazy, and she had cats in her home, and the instructions were to bring it to a rescue situation. And when we started reaching out for places to take the pet, there was nowhere to go. We were unable. I mean, we made multiple calls. I don't know if anybody remembers this. You could put this in the chat, but things just locked down. I can't remember. I know we had at least 2 cats in this house when this person passed. And so with that experience, really taught me to plan, think about backup plan, backup people, and to assess the situation and reassess the situation. Maybe your child's going to take your pet, and we say, okay, my daughter's going to take my pet, and 5 years later, your daughter now has a little child, or has a dog, and you have a cat, and your cat hates dogs. So that's not going to be a great place for us to have your legal documents say that now your daughter should take your cat, because it's just going to create chaos in our home. So we want to assess the situation, reassess it, and somebody just okay. And ask permission. I know this sounds ridiculous, but some people, when I'm meeting with them, oh, my daughter will take my cat. She loves cats, no problem. Okay, well, maybe she will, but let's have a conversation. This last point is to have a conversation with whoever you believe will take your pet, and not just have one conversation, but multiple conversations. And, rescue organizations, again, recently with this, this person who met with me had recently adopted an animal, and their adoption contract said if anything happened to them and they were unable to care for their pet, they must return the pet to the place where they adopted them. So I thought, that's interesting. So I called the organization, and believe it or not, they started backpedaling and saying, well, we don't know. Maybe we'll be able to take the pet. We don't know if the pet will be healthy. We don't know if we'll be able, what happens if we have too many pets and we can't take the pet? And so, having more than one conversation with an organization that you believe is going to take your pet, I think is important too. Let me just see if there's. So no, during COVID, we went everywhere, and no place would take any animals. Okay, all right. I'm just going to let Steve.
Yeah, I can jump in, and we can do some questions. Or do you have?
And I'm sorry. Just really one important. This goes back to my hospitalization. Before we jump into questions, please don't forget. Okay, with this hospitalization, when I found out that this person was hospitalized, when you're doing planning, how is somebody going to get into your house if you've passed or you're hospitalized? So we have to think about, how are they going to get in? Is there a key? Who has the key? How's the person who's going to care for the pet going to find the key, or find the person who has the key? And the one thing I did learn when I contacted and reached out to this rescue organization, who said that my client must return the pet there, they mentioned to me that how important it was to have an emergency box at our front door that might have, and what they emphasized was the idea of rabies. Okay, if your pet has rabies shots, if the rescue organization does not have a record and does not know, they are going to have to get your pet new rabies shots before they can get them rehomed. So please think about an emergency box. We're talking about vet information, medication that they're on, all kinds of things, and shots. If they have shots, have that information easily available. So here's kind of this pet checklist. Some information up here,
And Amy, I've got this PowerPoint. Is it okay if I add it to the link with the recording?
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
awesome. Yeah, because I know once you put this up, that's going to be one of the questions. Hey, can we get this PowerPoint? So that's great.
Sure. Yeah. And so
excellent. And I dropped your contact information, which is on the next slide, into the chat for everybody.
Thank you.
And then that'll also be at the recording link if you wanted to reach out to Amy. And obviously this is one of those things that it's a blind spot for a lot of us is that we're meeting with our advisors and thinking about our estate planning or thinking about the future. And if they don't bring up your pets, make sure that you bring it up, or, work with an attorney like Amy, who is familiar with and knows to ask this question. But let's dive into some of the comments and questions. As I'd mentioned, one of our community members who I've got to know pretty well, Barbara Osgood, she actually wrote this book, 84 Paws, is on the call today. And she says that I am solo elderly and I devoted untold hours to plan for my pets. I currently have 3 old labs. To be blunt, I think about what happens if I die at home with my dogs. What if my neighbors call the police because they haven't seen me? No time to find and process my will. The dogs will be taken to a shelter. I've made elaborate plans to cover this eventuality and consulted with the local police and sheriff staff, and shelter staff, I'm sorry. And let's see, Tracy asks, is there any way to ensure that the money left is used for the care? Meaning, does the caregiver or the person have to show receipts, afraid someone will just take the money and the pet goes to a shelter? And she mentions that my roommate passed away and she had a dog plus 2 cats. So I'm keeping them, and we are now the only home they know. Not every family member will do this, and they end up in shelters.
Or worse, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
But what is the check and balance? I guess the same could be said for like if a family dies and they've said that taking care of the minor children, and there were certain funds available for that.
yeah. So I think it's individualized, and, in the plan, we can make provisions where there's a checks and balance system. On one of the slides, it mentioned, if you have a trustee and they have the money, and then you have somebody else who is caring for the pet, then the caregiver is going to have to show receipts to that trustee to get the money. But, I think it depends on how much money you're going to leave the person. You might not have the ability if it's, $5,000 or $10,000. I think we really need to look to the caregiver of if we trust them with our pet, that perhaps is more, if we're going to trust them with our pet, I think we can probably make the leap that we can trust them with our money.
Yeah. But that's, and that goes into every estate planning and advanced directive discussion we have on here, is really think through the folks that you are asking to do these things. Let's see, Natalie asks, given the experience with the client who died of COVID, should there be a pandemic clause or something similar in the trust?
So I'm trying to, so if we had a provision that had a pandemic clause in there, so
I guess the situation where you were trying to find a shelter, but given, something happened, that we wouldn't be able to do it. I don't know how you address things like that in legal documents.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's why we always want to kind of have a backup plan. And because prior to COVID, I mean, it was just, never did it cross my mind that we wouldn't have somewhere we could bring that pet to. And we didn't look outside the state of Maryland, and maybe just, with COVID, we were just, it was in the beginning of COVID, it was a very interesting experience, right?
Yeah.
But what we ended up doing, I'll just share what we did, was we actually ended up paying the personal representative. It was at least 2 cats, and cats. We bought things. Sorry, I forget the name of it, but there's a system where it'll drop out so much food. I apologize, the name of it's escaping me. And so we bought things so that the cats could be there for a few days, and there'd be enough food and water, and the personal representative literally would drive over every few days, and we ended up paying her. It was a really extraordinary situation that we were living in, and you know what, the court approved it.
Wow, and that's great.
There's
several people have sort of shared in chat, and here's one that says, I've rescued 2 retired greyhounds. I signed a contract that the organization must be notified if I'm no longer able to care for them. So somebody else said the same thing, is that if you, a lot of dog clubs and things like that, if you adopt an animal and you can no longer care with it, it's mandatory that it go, or you pass, or you're injured or pass away, that it goes back to them.
Yeah. And I guess the organization I was dealing with this client, when I called them, I mean, they happen to be a very small organization. And, you know, I understand that the contract says that you have to return the animal, but I think in reality, they're really, you should consider a backup plan, because what happens if they can't take your pet?
Yeah, no, that's a great, we all need backup plans. And when we're talking legal, definitely. Well, Amy, we got through all the questions. So now,
Bring on.
Yeah, let's see here. Let me, yep, there, and I dropped that into chat. Oh, and somebody did have a question about your PowerPoints. I will definitely get those. I will upload the PowerPoint to the recording link, which will be on our website at proaging.com later this afternoon. But if anybody happens to have an animal handy, raise your hand, your little virtual hand. I see N Marks has his hand raised, or her hand raised. Okay, great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just bring over anybody that raises their little virtual hand to our, I'm promoting you to a panelist. So just the prompt that I am sharing with you will enable you to be a panelist, and then turn on your camera and we can see your pet. Oh, what happened? I thought that was Martha there. Did the paw?
Here she is.
Oh, Martha. Oh, beautiful dog.
Quick on the draw. Hello.
What's your dog's name?
Rivka.
Rivka. Oh, that's great. Yeah.
She's used to talking to people on Zoom.
Oh,
Hi.
that's great. Okay. I'm anybody whose hand is raised, I'm promoting.
I'll disappear.
Oh, no, hang out there.
Okay.
Let's see if we can get more than one dog on the screen at once. And I'll grab Violet as well. Oh, this is a long time friend. Violet, come here.
Oh. Who's that? Who's that?
So I haven't seen that guy in a while, Gabe Goldberg. Oh, and he's chasing his cat. And Kenneth, I really enjoy that. Now, the nice thing about your pet there, Kenneth, is that it's two cats that Gabe has. You don't need to walk that dog, and you don't need to take it to the vet, and you could probably still put that in your trust to let somebody take care of them. Oh, Violet, you're so good. But all right, let's see. And Martha, you just shared there that gruesome thought: if police find someone in their house who's passed away with their pets, how will they know who to contact? Would they look for the envelope mark open in case of emergency? And, Barbara had shared that she's really gone, done a lot of that by having something clearly marked in the house.
Really?
I'll
do that.
None of this will happen to any of us, but it's good to plan and think about it. Man, Gabe, if you can hear me, how many cats do you have?
Just two, Steve.
Oh, okay. What are your names?
And the interesting thing is they both picked us to live with us in different ways. The big orange cat showed up on our deck and demanded to live with us. And this cat that I'm chasing around the house was at the shelter when we went to adopt another cat. And this one started throwing herself at the plastic door of the crate. And my wife stuck her finger through the air hole, and this cat, Pandora, rubbed her face all over my wife's finger. And so we went for one cat and came back with two.
Oh.
And I hope you're enjoying the tour of the house that the cat is taking us on.
Yeah, no, this is a double thing. And let's see, somebody asked me what kind of a pet is Violet. Violet is a golden doodle, and she's about 5 years old. And then also somebody says, what about highly specialized therapy dogs? For example,
Oh, yeah.
there are dogs trained to know when one may be about to have an epileptic seizure and tell the person to sit down or lie down. Also, some of these dogs know when a diabetic person has low insulin levels. Do you think there's a special organization who might take these pets? My gut level feeling on that one is I know that a lot of these go through special training. So probably the organization that trained them would be interested in that.
Definitely.
And here's my friend Barbara Osgood. Hey, Barbara. So
I can also,
what's this dog name? Oh, sorry, Amy.
Oh, well, Barbara, you have to unmute. No, Steve, you and I both know Jane Markley, who does training. I'm going to ask her and see if she knows of an organization, because that's a good question. I don't know the answer.
Oh,
I'm having a hard time getting this guy on.
oh, that's okay. But what's his name?
This is Benji. He's an old guy. He's almost 17 years old. He's a
Wow.
lab, yellow
Nice.
lab. There we go. There's his profile.
And then Natalie, what's your dog's name? Whoops, you need to unmute.
Try again.
Yes, I'm sorry, I hadn't opened the camera either for a while. Yes, she's Daisy May and she's 12. And I have a cat across the way here who's 15 and he's Caramel. And I don't know what I'd do without them. It's wonderful having company.
Yeah.
Hi,
And
Daisy May.
Anita says, beautiful fur kids, and I have to agree. Well, this has been.
I do want to say, Steve, just quickly that I have two other old labs also. I have three. I rescue old labs. But they're in another room someplace. I don't know where they are.
Oh, that's great. Well, this has been informative and a lot of fun. And I want to
Veterinary
thank you,
technician.
Amy, for coming on and sharing your information. And I want to thank everybody who participated today. And I especially want to thank all of these lovely pets that we've got to meet here at the end. And I'll get this recording up and we'll see you all at the next discussion.
Thank you.
Thanks so
Steve.
much as always.
All right. Thanks a lot, Amy.
Thank
And
you.
we'll talk to you soon.